Well, that's it. Season 2 of Yellowjackets is no more, and it's safe to say that the season definitely went out with a bang. Following on from Javi's death in the past in the previous episode, and also Lottie making the decision in the present day that the wilderness wanted the group to partake in some kind of ritualistic sacrifice like they did when they were lost, this episode was definitely one of the most haunting ones in the entire season. I would also say that it looked like the show definitely set up as season 3 as well. So with that, let's recap, break down, and explain all that there was to take away from this episode. So let's get into it. Here is Yellowjackets Season 2 Episode 9 Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. I'm going to break this video down by the two different storylines that we had going on throughout the episode, the past tense and the present day. Let's start with the past. So within this story, we saw that the group had brought Javi back after pulling him out of the ice-cold water. This was so that they didn't waste him and they'd all be able to survive. All of the group were essentially immune to what they had witnessed. Other than that, she felt the guilt and the burden of it due to it originally being her, but she ultimately came off okay and was unscathed. And this was something that she carried with her right up until the present day, as we saw Javi alongside her on the metaphorical plane going into the afterlife. We saw a real sense of divide for the first time in this storyline. We saw that Coach had moved away from the rest of the group and he didn't believe in the way that they were acting, especially the fact that they were killing off people in order to survive, something which he was even shocked about. It went from happiness with the idea that he thought that they caught an animal, but it turned into upset when he realized that it was Javi. This was what ultimately led him to do what he did right at the end of the episode when he set the cabin on fire. Lottie was disappointed with the group over what they did, which did surprise me. I feel Lottie could have been the individual that was visiting Javi when he was hiding, as I remember back when he returned, he mentioned somebody visiting him, and when he did, Lottie and himself exchanged some kind of look, so I feel she may have had a deeper connection to him. There was a dark moment where Travis ate his heart, and it essentially enabled the rest of the group to cook their meat, and they all scurried around like animals on a carcass as they threw their food into the hot pan. A moment that showed just how out of touch they were with their human instincts. With Lottie feeling a sense of absence over what happened and the disconnect, she went on to eventually say how she never wanted to be the group's leader, and that she was only the leader because the wilderness chose her. But now she couldn't hear the wilderness and everybody else could, which ultimately led her to name Nat as the new leader. In honor of her surviving, she believed that the wilderness had picked her, something which upset Shauna because she thought that she had a deep connection with the wilderness. As we saw, it was written on a piece of paper. It also seems as though she now feels invisible following what happened with her baby, and how Jackie was the only person that made her feel seen. It was right at the end where we saw Ben as an act of revenge on the group and as a way of showing that he didn't stand with what they did and continue to do. He ended up setting fire to the cabin, thus destroying the very thing that houses them and keeps them alive. Ben is obviously okay because he's hiding out where Travis was, and nobody else knew where the hideaway was. But the group now have nothing to protect them from the harsh winter that we know is on the cards, as Ben mentioned that it was approaching that time of year, so maybe they might end up stumbling across it. With the ever-present symbol being outside the location, we know that Ty is deeply connected to that symbol, so they may end up finding it eventually, especially if the alternative version of herself starts coming back again. Will the group see this as the wilderness making a decision? Who knows? It could well be positioned as that. But it's going to get a lot harder to survive now that they have nothing to protect them from the ice-cold temperatures and winds. It was a good end to the story that was in the past, and one that I feel has a lot of room to continue to be developed. The present day. Usually I prefer the story that's unfolding within the past, but in this episode I much preferred the one in the present day. Why? Because it was epic. Natalie ended up being killed off. With the group agreeing to partake in the ritualistic sacrifice as a way of appeasing Lottie, we saw Ty and Van essentially go against the agreement to call the authorities to get Lottie sectioned by phoning them up and cancelling it, thus allowing the ritual to actually take place. Van was acting quite off in this episode and we never really got a true answer as to why, which was a shame. We saw the group stand around the fire and draw cards like we saw with what happened on the day that Javi was killed. Whoever drew the Queen of Hearts would be the victim. What started as the group not being willing to participate turned into them almost being transported back to the mindset that they had when they were younger. This was also supported by the glitch effect that was occurring and the fact that they were participating without saying a thing. Shauna selected the card and wasn't prepared to stand there and be offered to the wilderness, which meant that she ended up running, feeling exactly what Natalie felt all of those years ago. It was here where Callie arrived and managed to prevent the group from going after her mother due to firing at Lottie. But in a surprise twist, Lisa arrived and was pointing a weapon at them, the very person that Natalie had been looking out for throughout the entirety of the show. Lottie was in a deranged state where she was saying how everything that had happened since they left the wilderness was due to the presence that had returned, which was something that nobody else believed. As this was happening, Misty was walking over to Lisa to neutralize her, but she ended up putting it in Natalie by mistake, killing her best friend in the process. It was a powerful moment for sure. We saw that as Natalie was dying, she was sat on a plane with Javi and a younger version of Lottie, and it showed us that she had essentially been stuck in the wilderness from the moment that she left. Nat was never able to detach her mind over what happened all of those years ago, and now she was finally at peace. Natalie was actually one of the most human, sympathetic and empathetic people when it came to all of them. Misty felt responsible for what happened and had to watch her best friend depart in her own arms. What's really interesting about Nat's death is the fact that it still begs the question to us: did the wilderness choose Nat to die? Was the presence really there? As the card was drawn like it was all of those years ago, and the real person who the wilderness wanted to die did. So even though many of them believed that there was no wilderness presence that was within them, and that it was just themselves that carried out the horrific acts, it could well be. Lottie even mentioned, "What's the difference?" which I thought was interesting, as it showed that the wilderness itself and being trapped there was what ultimately changed them as individuals, and it allowed them to tap into a dark side that is now a part of them. There was a subplot that was also going on where Kevin and Matt were in the compound looking for Shauna, but we essentially saw that Jeff and Walter set up Kevin to be framed for a form of corruption, which meant that the case was going to be dropped against Shauna and divert their eyes away from it. Overall review: I thought this was a fantastic episode in the season, the best of season 2. It felt right that Natalie was the character to go if one of the main characters was going to be removed from the present day, as her story did kind of feel like it had come to more of a natural end. I thought the score behind this episode was harrowingly haunting. It made me feel so uncomfortable when I was watching it, and it really suited the mood and tone that they wanted to get across, especially the scenes that contained Javi in them. With the group now being without their cabin, it's going to make things so much more difficult for them, as they now have nowhere to hide. I imagine they'll most likely think that it's Ben that did it as well, which will mean that Ben most probably won't be lasting long in season 3. All of the actors have done a phenomenal job in this season of the show, and I can't fault any of them in the slightest. This was a miserable end to a show that had embodied the darkness and gave us characters that were still living in the past 25 years later. I can't wait to see what happens with season 3. So, there you have it, Yellowjackets season 2 episode 9, Ending Explained. If you want to see more videos such as Endings Explained, theories and predictions and character breakdowns, then click on the I button. Or alternatively, you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. If you'd like to give me a show or movie that you'd like me to review, then head over to my Twitter, @brainpilot_, and tweet me what show or movie you'd like me to review next. And finally, if you'd like to see what I rate the latest movies that don't quite make the cut to getting a dedicated video, then head over to my Letterboxd profile. It's where I rate the latest releases in real time. What did you think of this episode? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.